Welcome back to Growing Up Late. My mother invented the plastic kite. There are some voices that don't leave. They're internal narrators that aren't our usual narrator. It's someone else's voice, someone who's left the room already, maybe even the planet. Because my mother's voice is one of those voices. And one of the things I remember her saying so clearly, and I can hear it in my head because I think she tells the stories of my childhood to me, was, "Oh no, but I'm not an inventor." Which I find interesting because I'm pretty sure she invented the plastic kite. At least that's the story I have. My mom was a very young widow. My dad died when I was 5, but my mom wanted to make sure that my brother and I had all the same opportunities, activities, and adventures that every other kid had. So she took us kite flying. We tried once in my front yard and once out in a field with a bunch of other people who were flying kites. I think she thought proximity might rub off, maybe some kite flying 101 by osmosis. I remember in the front yard, the kite came to a disastrous end very quickly because we had a rather large tree that it got wrapped up in, and to tug at it would be to destroy it. Back in the day when I was a kid, these kites were made out of very thin balsa wood sticks and tissue paper, just glued lightly to them. So there wasn't much to them. They were pretty flimsy. And the second time we went out on the field, from what I recall, it was either a big gust of wind or a collision with another kite. But I think we decided that that was enough kite flying. And I remember my little brother being very disappointed and my mom saying, "It's ridiculous. It's so frustrating. Why don't they make these things out of something more durable, like plastic?" And we both perked up. "Mom, that's a great idea." And she said, "Oh, but I'm not an inventor." "It sounds like you're an inventor to us, you know? We just heard her come up with an invention. Isn't that how it happens?" I think that's the way kids think. But also, isn't it true? Somebody has an idea, boom, and then they go after it. And I think maybe the difference is between having an idea and believing we're a person who's capable of bringing that idea to life, because my mother was very certain she was not an inventor. But not long after that, I might say it was even the next kite flying season, there were plastic kites. I think they were actually made out of nylon, but they looked like bat's eyes and they were just completely different. And they had plastic sticks instead of light wood sticks, and they flew much better. And we used to rib my mother and say, "You invented that, you invented that, and why didn't you tell somebody? You could have been the inventor of the plastic kite." And she just said, "Well, I'm not an inventor, and I wouldn't even know who to tell. It's just not what I do." You know? So there you have it. My mother didn't actually invent the plastic kite, but she had an idea for something, 100%, that later happened, not too long after either. And I do believe that the big difference is believing we're capable. Because she also couldn't build a fire. I know she tried so hard. I loved fires. My dad's side of the family always would have big bonfires on the beach and huge fireplaces in the living room whenever we would have family reunions, and I loved them. And I would beg my mother to light a fire in the fireplace. We had a beautiful one in the den. And she tried so hard. I think she looked at my brother's scouting book. I know she asked other people. And you know how when other people know how to do things, they take for granted that you have these skills? And she, I think, may have asked the guy across the street who said, you know, you just twist up newspaper and stick it in between the logs of wood. And when the newspaper catches fire, the logs will ignite. It's really easy. And you know, it is really easy. I mean, I've become, after that, obsessed with lighting fires. And I can tell you that you need to make sure the newspaper isn't rolled up so tightly because the fire needs air. And it takes 3 pieces of wood and they have to be angled a certain way. But my mother's instructions were take 3 logs and crumple up newspaper, and she could not get a fire to light. It wouldn't light. You know, you twist newspaper up into like a solid brick. It's not what a fire needs. Neither here nor there. She wasn't a woman who could light a fire. And she asked for directions and it failed. So we got Duraflame logs and they were fine, but they weren't the roaring fires that I craved. We even got these wooden cylinder tubes full of this magic dust you would sprinkle on the logs and they would sparkle and explode with different colors. Not big explosions, mind you, but that's what we got. Duraflame logs with sparkles. And speaking of the beach, which is where the family reunions were, my mom didn't learn to drive until she was mid-30s. My father taught her how to drive. She tells a story about she and one other woman who was about her age out with her husband on a Sunday in their cars in opposite corners of this vast expanse of empty parking lot. And lo and behold, did they not head right for each other? It just proves whatever you focus on, that's where you're headed. Anyhow, she wasn't a fantastic driver. She learned late in life, and it was something she was kind of fearful. And in order to get to our family reunions, you had to drive down Route 128 just outside of Boston. And that was a harrowing road for even a good driver. And she simply couldn't do it. So one of my uncles would always meet us at the University Railroad Station. She could make it that far, and he would take us the rest of the way there. And I did love the fires that they had there. Huge bonfires on the beach. Big fires in the gigantic hearth in the living room they had there. And of course, my dad came from a really big family, and we didn't see them very often, but they didn't live close by. But when we went to these family reunions, I had like dozens of cousins and aunts and uncles everywhere. Maybe that's what made the fires so special. My mom was such a contradiction because here she was, a young widow, at a time when I don't think women were even legal to get their own credit cards yet. But she had them, in my dad's name, of course. She managed to buy a home, raise 2 kids, make sure that we had every opportunity. She wanted well-rounded children. I mean, she was so competent, capable. She was an extraordinary woman. She was educated and an educator. She really was a contradiction. Because surely that woman that I knew of, this brave, trailblazing young woman navigating widowhood so successfully, she could invent a kite. It was definitely a contradiction. And I think it speaks a lot to the gap between our capabilities and the limits and the self-imposed concepts we have about who we are, who we could be. And I feel like it's a lot about permission. Permission. I think my mom may have been looking for permission to do and be things. And maybe that comes a little bit from the era she was raised in and lived her life in. But when I look at it objectively, I can say I conquered the things my mother was afraid of. I am an excellent fire builder. I build them all the time. I will only live in a home that has a big fireplace. I love my big backyard fire pit. I will build fires as big as I can possibly build in whatever space you give me. I love a fire. So I conquered that. It was important to me to know how to do that. That was one of the things I put on my list, must know how to do. And I do quite well. Driving, that's another thing. I love to drive. I own a fast car and I know how to use it. Speed and handling, that's my game. I love to drive. It's one of those things. It's kind of one of my fun activities in life, we'll say, is driving. And I think perhaps in a different time, I would have said when I was little, I want to be a race car driver. My friends will attest to this. Anyhow, so I conquered a lot of her fears. I drive everywhere. I can go anywhere. I can build a fire. I got a big job. I moved away from the town I grew up in. I got married, and I had, at least for a time, I had the perfect family, right? Husband, wife, bunch of kids, It was something I always wanted. I saw it in the families of my cousins and whatnot. So here I am thinking, I have overcome all those fears of my meek mother, who, in my own mind, I know far better than to think she was meek. She just didn't think she was capable, and maybe she was looking for permission. But I thought I was better than that. And then I need to take an accurate survey of what I was really doing in my life. I have notebooks, digital and paper, that I've been keeping for years with ideas of my own. Not for a plastic kite, but for this podcast. Not exactly, but it was a notion that I should use my voice to share some knowledge or things I believe in or helpful things. I mean, growing up late came out of that notebook in a way. And I picked up a notebook the other day and I'd written in it 2013, over a decade ago. And the outline for this very podcast was contained within it. So I guess I didn't think I was a podcaster. And my version of I'm not an inventor was I'm not ready. Or who do I think I am? I too was waiting for permission to become the things I wanted to become. Creative, a creator, a podcaster. I mean, I took endless classes, got additional certifications, training, always waiting for what? The next skill? I think I might have been waiting for permission too. It seems like we have a narrative about who we can and cannot be. And I hadn't outgrown it or outrun it either. I had just traded her limits for new and improved limits of my very own. I don't know. Do you have anything that tugs on your heartstrings? Something you think you were meant to do? Something you wanted to bring into the world, achieve, overcome, create, whatever that tugs at you? Not a fantasy, but something like that you could actually tangibly do, but you're waiting for permission. I guess the thing that pops up for me next is, who's going to give the permission? I may have written off my mom too. The permission came from the time she lived in, the way the world was. What's my excuse? I know for a fact that I can give myself permission to do whatever I want. I'm a grown-up. I have given myself permission to do so many things, but arbitrarily I seem to have decided some things I'm not. It's the craziest thing. And I've also become very aware through my own stumbling efforts that it isn't always the person who's the smartest, the most talented, the most anything that does the thing that creates the next plastic kite. It's the person who takes action. So I feel like the difference is permission. Somewhere in there is the belief that it's okay, that I'm allowed to dream this dream, want this thing, and do it. I don't know, but that's where I'm at. I really do believe that. And I think the only person that could have ever given me permission to do this was me. I sought it. I sought permission from people around me, but I never called it that. I was surveying. Do you think I'm ready? Do you think I have the right camera, the right light, the right this, the right that? Am I the right person? What do I really have to say? I'm finding out as I go along. But I have given myself permission to do just that. And I hope you will too. If this episode resonated with you, please subscribe, like, or share with a friend. And join us next week. We're just getting started.